Swedish House Mafia's latest masterpiece, Red Light, is here. This powerful drop blew me away the first time I listened to it. Now let's get into the first section of this tutorial and see what's going on. This bass is not a mediocre one. Every note of this bass is hitting differently. You see guys, in the bass section, I have separated different notes in different tracks, as you can see right here. The last two layers are very simple. The last one is the sub and low mid frequencies. This one is just side informations for this bass. But in these 4 layers, I'm separating different notes in different tracks because we are going to have different sustain amounts, different release amounts, different cutoff amounts, and different distortion amounts. And I don't know if Swedish House Mafia has done it this way in this project or not, but I think by this way you can achieve a very natural and professional sounding bass. So let's zoom in a little bit. And guys, the first note in this track is this. If you pay close attention, the first one has less high end, but the second note has more high end with the help of this auto filter in Ableton. In the second hit, there is this top layer coming in. And after the second hit, there are these 3 notes right here. These 3 notes become more aggressive compared to the first 2 notes. Let's take a listen to the solo of these last 3 notes. You see guys, the first 2 notes, the last 3 notes, and all the layers together. You get the idea guys. Now guys, let's get into sound design and mix down of this bass. The most important sounds in this bass are the last 3 notes. I want to show you first these 3 last notes because these are making the character of this bass in this drop of Swedish House Mafia. Let's get into Serum. Here, as you might have guessed, we have a saw wave right here. Here is the envelope, and this envelope is modulating 3 things in the FX section. After adding OTT and after adding this distortion diode number 1, I added this phaser to add a little bit of character to the bass. Very subtle difference, but very important. And after that, I have added this filter. First, let me turn off this filter. But with this filter, the bass is coming to place. This envelope is modulating the cutoff right here, the resonance right here, and the drive right here. And it is very important to shape this beautiful and powerful bass sound. And one another important thing in this bass is to make it mono, and here in the pitch bend section, pay close attention to the middle note of this bass. Very important for this character. Let's take a look at the automation of this pitch bend for this middle note. This starts from 2 semitones up and comes to 0 near the end of the note. And I think we hear this technique in a lot of Axwell productions. This is one of his signature sounds, in my opinion. And next, as always, I have added some frequency shifter here with the fine knob to make this sound darker. After that, a little bit of saturation with Decapitator. Here we've got Pro Q3, a little bit of EQ. I didn't want this low end right here. After that, I have added Isotope Trash 2. Very simply, it is making the sound more aggressive. I didn't want it to distort and saturate the low end, so I selected this middle band and I added push-pull preset in saturation section. Let me turn this off for you and pay close attention to the high end and high mids of this sound. With the Trash 2 on, this is making it more aggressive, and this is exactly what we want. After that, I have added my lovely Valhalla Vintage Verb tiled room preset to add some room reverb to this bass sound. Very important for this sound. Of course, this is subtle, but without this reverb, the bass becomes very digital. And after that, I have monoed the sound because we have some side information layers to accompany this layer in the other tracks. And guys, the next important sound, in my opinion, is this top layer that is playing just 1 note in every bar. Let's take a listen to the solo of the top layer again. And guys, I think this sound that I have made could be more accurate to the original sound of Swedish House Mafia. But in my opinion, this top layer that Swedish House Mafia has added to their sound in this drop is not made in an oscillator. It is very organic, and I think it might be a sample, and it is not reasonable and it is not practical to replicate it in an oscillator and synths like Serum. But this is very comparable in my opinion. And in Serum section, the most important part about this sound, after choosing the oscillator, which is a saw again, is that modulate it with this envelope right here to some characteristic distortion like this one that I had used in a Martin Horger tutorial. It was this synfold, but here it is, I think, linear fold. I don't know what it stands for, but it is adding a lot of character to this sound. Let me turn this off. I turn this on and pay close attention to this shape, which is modulated with this envelope 1 right here. All the characters are coming from this linear fold distortion right here. This is very important, guys. And after that, very simply, I modulated all these 3 knobs right here. Like our first layer with this envelope, I turn this off. Everything comes to place with these 2 important modulations. And guys, in the mixing section, I added this EQ. I didn't want it the low end, I didn't want it the high end. After that, I added this Echo Boy. This is a very short delay with 51 milliseconds of delay. The feedback is at 0 and this is adding some flutter echo to the sound. I turn this off. Very subtle but very important. After that, I have added this Valhalla Vintage room reverb again, and after that I have added a hall reverb to the sound. With this Valhalla Vintage, the decay is at 1 second right here. And in the automation section, you see I have added this automation and it is turning the device off right here, which is this one, and it is turning the reverb off. It is cutting the reverb before the next note plays. Let's take a listen. I turn the automation off. You see the decay of the reverb is making the drop muddy, but I turn the automation on again. It cuts the decay and the drop and the bass become clean and clear in the drop. This is very important. After that, I have added some clipping to the sound. This is very important because this is a tacky sound. I wanted to clip it a lot to make more headroom in the mastering section for myself. I have clipped it about 4 dBs. Very important. After that, I cut it the low end, and in the last stage, I didn't like this frequency. It was a bad resonance, and I cut it off. A very ugly sound. Next, guys, we have this side layer. There is no mono information right here. It is just made for the side information of the sound. And here is the sound. I have chosen the basic MG right here. This is a very simple saw. I have added 5 voices of unison. I have monoed the sound. And in the FX section, to make it wider, I have added some hyper dimension. The size is at 3%. The mix is at 40%. And the hyper is turned off. I didn't want it the unison effect of this hyper dimension right here. After that, I have added some OTT, a little bit of distortion, as always. For the character, here is the phaser. And with this envelope, I'm modulating these 3 knobs of the cutoff because I wanted to make it as similar as possible to the other layers of this drop. And next, the processing is the same, except here I have added wider to make it wider, 37%. And after that, as always, as you have seen in my other tutorials, I have added Ozone 90 major with 35% and 6 milliseconds of delay between the left and right channel to make it as wide as possible. Room reverb, and I have taken out the low end and the body of this sound to have a clear stereo image for these basses. And the last layer is the sub frequencies and low mid frequencies. Very simple, guys. Guys, if you want to know how I made this preset, I have explained this in my other tutorials. Go and watch them. This is very simple, but very powerful at the same time. And for this drop, because I had a lot of basses, I take a lot of control in the low mid section of my bass with this multiband. Let me turn this off. The low mid becomes very controlled and very clear. Next, with this EQ, I took out a lot of the high frequencies of this low mid and sub frequencies because, as the name says, it is just for sub frequencies and low mid frequencies. That's what we want. And after that, a big sidechain at the end because I wanted to make space for the kick right here with this preset sub bass chain and mixes at 100%. And that's it guys for the bass section. If you have found this video useful so far, please consider liking and subscribing, and of course this gives me a lot of motivation to make more of this stuff. And also hit the notification bell for all the future breakdowns and projects. Thank you friends. The most minimal drums and details are keeping the groove going in this drop. Let's get into the minimal details first. There is nothing in this drop except the bass and the drums, but these are just these two little vocals happening. First in the start of the drop and next in the second half of the bar to keep the groove going. This is the first vocal, and in the drop, this is just emphasizing the first strong bit of the drop. And next we have this second vocal. And this delay and reverb are very similar to the effects that Skrillex uses in his songs, especially on his vocals. Pay close attention to the effects that accompany this vocal. Very nice. First we have this Echo Boy. The time is at 1/16. The feedback is at right here, 1.03. And I have cut it a lot of the low end from this delay. I turn the reverb off. I turn the delay off. Very nice. And next I have added this reverb. This is a Hall reverb with 2.5 milliseconds of decay. The mix is at 33%. And in the whole context of the drop, this vocal is keeping the groove up and forward. Super nice. And guys, in the drum sections, there is nothing. There is just this one kick, very powerful one and punchy one. And I am taking a lot of control at the low mids and high mids of this sound. Let me turn this multiband off. This kick is overpowering in the drop. Amateur sounding, as you see in a lot of my tutorials. I take a lot of controls of the low mids of my sounds, but in this case, here, these frequencies were a little bit overpowering in the drop. But when I turn this on, everything sits perfectly in the mix. Nice. Next we have this very short and transient clap. Super nice. And then we have these weird percussions. These percussions just making the drop professional. Let's take a listen to the solo of them. This is a side percussion. It is accompanied with the bass line and then this last layer. Nice. With the other drums and with the basses. Guys, these subtle sounds and subtle differences make a drop professional, and if a drop lacks these little and subtle differences, the drop, in my opinion, becomes an amateur one. And that's it guys for this section. Thanks for watching friends. If you have any questions about the tips that we talked about today, just ask me in the comments, and I love you so much. Bye.